Michigan defeats Washington 34-13, and that's not fun to watch as a Penn State fan, Penn State spectator, Penn State reporter, that Michigan's able to do this, but Penn State was not. And I think the glaring part of it all, when you hold up the mirror in this case, is that Penn State had the caliber defense to get to that spot. There were a lot of other elements that, you also need to be able to have an offensive coordinator that you can retain to get to that point, and all the other parts to it, wide receivers that can get open, quarterbacks that aren't afraid to take risks. We know that Drew Aller was afraid to take risks or was being told not to. Whatever the case was, actually, we know that there were elements of it, but Penn State had a defense that was definitely comparable to Michigan's. The statistics say that they were even slightly better in some cases, but the top three defenses in all of college football this year came from the Big Ten: Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. And Michigan wins the championship by the exact formula that Penn State was essentially running. Penn State took the ball away from Drew Aller and said, you know what, we're going to rely strictly on our defense. Do not turn the football over, Drew, and we're going to use the ground game with our two dynamic running backs to propel us to victory. Michigan did exactly that. Relied on elite defense, took the ball out of J.J. McCarthy's hands, and relied on, and they threw to 4 different receivers. They threw to 4 different targets in a championship game. They relied on Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, who combined for over 200 yards together and 4 touchdowns, and then a defense to absolutely stonewall and what we were led to believe and what we saw all season, an elite Washington defense. But it's not that Penn State's defense was far behind or that they weren't in the same conversation as Michigan's defense. No, they were. Right? They held Michigan to 24 points this season. Other teams were not able to do that. And I know that Alabama had held them, and then it took overtime, right? They held them to 20. But I also think that if Penn State doesn't go for it at their own 30 in that game, then maybe even the total is set to 17. But let's look at let's put some pressure on the pain point here, as this is what the defense was able to do this season. And top across the nation in a lot of other categories as well. But just to summarize it here, Penn State had an 18 turnover margin defensively, 24 forced to 6 turnovers lost. And then, okay, the offense protected the football. They did what they were asked to do. But the Nittany Lions led the nation in turnovers forced and the turnover margin. So Manny Diaz, of course, relevant to this conversation as well, even though he's not with the defense anymore. He's not with the team. But this is what happened in 2023. 48 sacks, most in the nation. 101 tackles for loss. That was number 1 among Power 5 teams. And then 3 shutouts. I know this was against Iowa, UMass, and Michigan State. Not exactly the best offenses in the world, but 3 shutouts in one season. And then 223.3 yards per game, best in the country as well. So this is what the defense did, and Penn State still went. This is a defense that wins you a national championship game. This is a defense that wins you Big Ten conferences at a very minimum. So what did the offense do? Because the defense did this in spite of everything else, because Penn State's offense was in most games sustaining longer drives. But you look at those statistics, and that is nothing short of impressive, because of you don't have a juggernaut on offense. So that means the defense is out there a little more. They're playing more snaps. They're on the field a little more, and they're doing all of this too. Yet this is the results that took place. Now, offensively, these are some statistics that kind of tell the entire story. Total offensive plays, the explosive plays. James Franklin always talks about, we got to win the explosive plays battle. 40-plus yards. Penn State had 6 of them in 2023 with a 5-star quarterback, 5-star running back, another high-end 4-star, two high-end caliber players at running back. I had good tight ends, best offensive line in Penn State, in the last decade for Penn State football. Compare that to 2022 with Sean Clifford. He's not that good. Is he even really an NFL quarterback? It's just Parker Washington. It's just Mitchell Tinsley. We don't know that Brenton Strange is the best tight end in that room. Penn State had 17. 17. That is almost triple. So last year's and remember, Singleton and Allen were just freshmen, and the offensive line was good, but not as good as 2023's. But Penn State had 17 of those explosive plays compared to 6 in 2023. The ranks, so let's dial it back a little bit. Cut the yardage in half. So instead of 40 plus yard plays, how about 20 plus yard plays? Penn State's national rank for plays that were 20 or more yards offensively, 106th. That's comparable to what, Rutgers? This year's team. Sorry, Tom Allen, this year's Indiana. Though that's bad. That's bad. When you look at the passing attack in terms of yards per play or just total yards in general per game, in the 80s among FBS teams, running attack with Singleton and Allen in the backfield, 50 in the 50s in yards per carry, yards per game. That's not good. That's not good. And that is why Penn State was not able to move to that next spot to beat Ohio State, to beat Michigan. And it has to sting. It does, because the defense was number one in so many categories. Michigan was number one in other categories. Now they were number one in the category that matters most, winning all your games and winning the national championship, winning the college football playoff. They did that. So Penn State can pat itself on the back and say, well, we led all these categories defensively, but there's really nothing to show for it. You had a 10-3 season. You lost in the Peach Bowl. And I know what everyone might say as a counter argument. Well, look at the Peach Bowl because if Penn State went up against an If you replace them there with Michigan, you lose to Alabama. And probably this version of the team, absolutely. But I'm saying, what if the offense just did a little bit more? What if the offense wasn't so keen on just protecting the football, had a little bit more of a dynamic, a tendency to try the explosive plays, to trust the 5-star quarterback that we know from an arm talent standpoint is better than Sean Clifford. Drew Aller has more arm talent than Sean Clifford, but Sean Clifford's certainly the smarter quarterback, the more mentally tough quarterback. And people in my comments agree that if you play as a pedestrian and you're not the aggressor, you can't be a quarterback. You can't be that. So Drew Aller has to be able to shed some of those tendencies going into 2024 if they want to make this situation better offensively, because it was not the defense's fault in any situation. So you bring up the Peach Bowl. Oh, well, Ole Miss scored 38 points, and Penn State was out without Adisa Isaac, Chop Robinson, Abdul Carter, Kalen King, Johnny Dixon. Those are all conference players, all America players, and future NFL starters, may I add you. So that's the conversation here. I mean, Penn State held Michigan to 24 points, and to see Washington just get bulldozed the entire game mostly, I think that Penn State just has to, it's going to linger a little bit what could have been for them. But other general takeaways, because now the Big Ten is going to expand in 2024. Penn State's going to face Washington. Penn State's going to face USC, UCLA, and Oregon in due time. But Washington had no answer for Michigan's running attack. 100-plus yards and 2 touchdowns each from Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. And Edwards had, 6, 7 carries in that game? The explosive plays. Washington... they have the talented players, don't get me wrong, but schematically, they had no answer. I don't want to say that they were outcoached, but the style of play, you didn't adjust it. So I guess in that sense, you were outcoached because you didn't make the necessary adjustments. Yes, there was that period where Michigan's offense did go to sleep, but so did Washington's. Washington's offense was nowhere to be found. So the defense made some plays, but Michigan was able to do what it wanted to do at will. They didn't turn the ball over. They kept running the football effectively and used good defense, and they got pressure on Michael Penix. So Penn State has a similar style of play to Michigan, if you can believe that. Ohio State did as well. Don't turn the football over. We'll use, now they had a Marvin Harrison Jr., but we'll use our key star players to make big plays for us, and we'll rely on the ground game of Travion Henderson, Singleton. Do you notice all the common themes here? Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards. You can debate who's better, and we all know that where those groups would rank among one another. But now for Ohio State, they're all right, and Quinshon Judkins transferring. So, but I'm getting at that they all followed a similar pattern here. We have a talented quarterback, but we're going to still protect the football and not give turnovers to the other team to keep them in this game. We're going to rely on good offensive line play, talented running backs, and we're not just going to rely on a bell cow. We're going to split the usage between our two best guys so that they can be ready to go in the fourth quarter. That was the winning formula. So Penn State was there, but didn't dig far enough? I don't know, because they had the elements, because Michigan did it, Ohio State did it, Penn State was doing it, but Michigan and Ohio State did it better than Penn State, as we all can see. So my point being is that Washington, who had no answer for it, is now coming into the Big Ten. USC, who probably wouldn't have an answer for it, finished 8-5. So the team that struggled in the Pac-12 this past season and lost to Washington, and Michigan beat up on Washington, and now those teams are coming into the Big Ten. We'll see how Oregon adjusts. UCLA had a very good defense as well. But those, if Washington has problems with it, well, welcome to the Big Ten, my friends. That's really the offense, the play style. It's really the Pac-12 defenses are going to have headaches. And then we'll finish with this. There's the argument that, Big Ten defenses are only good because they play bad offenses. They only play against bad offenses. Michigan held Washington to 13 points in a championship game. So you put your best plays together. There's no holding back. You have your best plays together. You don't try to diversify your offense to save things and be strategic. It's all or nothing at this stage. And Washington, analytically a top 5 offense, and statistically the numbers too as well, only put up 13 points. So Oregon, UCLA, USC, in addition to Washington, all doing just that. How far is that going to get you in the Big Ten?